Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and I think in the coming weeks I would like to do something a bit different. I want to start a read-along. I've seen quite a few reviews of this book, but I figured I should read it myself to form an opinion, and best case scenario, I disagree with the reviews and enjoy it. Worst case scenario, I'll learn something. So over the next few weeks, I'll be reading The Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg LaTorre. And I will discuss the book in more detail on this channel, I think. Well, to the best of my abilities. So, looks like a pretty chunky book, might take a while. And a few videos. But I think the cover is just beautiful, for starters. So I guess that's a good start. I'm not a big fan of like circuses, so let's see about that. Your average circus has way too many clowns for my taste. Random side note, I don't know what Amazon was doing, but can you see this? It's already like bent and... yeah. Great way to deliver a book, Amazon, thanks. Well, I'll be putting notes in it and washi tape, I guess, so it's not that much of an issue because I can't pass this on to anybody else after anyway. But still, not great. So I finally started reading The Cyborg Tinkerer, and yeah, let's discuss chapter 1, shall we? It starts off great with like the Crusty Tulip. It's like, what kind of name for a ship is that? Why would this tulip be crusty? It sounds just gross, really. Okay. Then it starts off, I mean, the cover already tells you, right? It's like literally sail ships in space, which makes zero sense. There's no wind to propel you forwards, but just let's just suspend our disbelief on this one and ignore that other shapes would be far more useful if you want propulsion in space, but whatever. So Gwen pretty much instantly starts swearing and letting you know that she's very grown up because she has a potty mouth. Except that's not how that works, and I found her a bit off-putting, to be honest. I mean, you can swear, yes, but like even people I know who swear a lot do not swear this much. And at points it just felt like it was used for shock value rather than, oh, this is how the person actually talks. And then we're only on the second page and it starts with inconsistencies. So Gwen tells you that she's not big on making friends and she hadn't bothered to get to know anybody on the ship before she now leaves this ship. And yet another person who comes up and talks to her seems to think that Gwen should have stopped by their room the night before to spend the night with them. It's like, where's this coming from? Gwen is so off-putting and keeps everybody at bay, then why would this other person assume that she had any interest in spending the night with her? This is random, but the Cirque du Borg just made me think that we've just gone Star Trek and we're going after the Borg. But, you know, spelling is slightly different, but still. Yeah, that only takes until page 3 for some info dumping about the circus and how cyborgs have been outlawed. None of it tells you why they have been outlawed exactly, but they are very illegal, just so you know. Sorry, this very illegal is also in cursive. It's like, this is very redundant, but okay. And here I'm not quite sure, like Gwen tells you that those laws against cyborg implants are the reason why she can't do anything about her brain tumor. And it's like, having a brain tumor removed requires you to have cyborg parts? Like, how does this work? Why would this require you to have cyborg parts all of a sudden? There's some phrasing that I find rather awkward and random. A sudden pang of envy clapped against Gwen's consciousness. Okay. Okay, just not sure about that. I know. Ideally in your writing, nothing should make the reader go, huh, what did I just read? And this is one of those sentences. We get some more info dumping about hoverboards, but it's like one paragraph, so it's not exactly horrendous or anything. It's just obvious enough for me to mark it on the side, I guess. Oh god, yeah. Gwen tells you that she's dying, like, over and over. I think it's like 3 or 4 instances in chapter 1 alone where she tells you, oh my god, these are my last days. I got it the first time. You can stop telling me. There's more cursing on Gwen's part, and at points it just took me out of the story because I had to wonder, it's like, who curses this much? Like, literally nobody. And it just seemed a bit childish and unnecessary. I'm also not sure, when you swear, do you actually think to yourself with those swear words? Because I don't think I do, and nicely fucking done just sounds meh. I don't think anybody says or thinks that, really. I have certainly never heard anybody say it like this. So Gwen makes her way to this illegal circus full of cyborgs. And I already have 2 questions, like, how do so many people know that this circus is in town? How do you even set up something the size of a circus without the authorities noticing? Or do the authorities know and there's something else going on? I had to wonder. Anyway, Gwen goes to the circus, watches some of the stuff, somebody comes on to her, and she's really into it, which in and by itself is fine. Okay, you are on your last legs and you just want to bone whoever to pass the time, so it's cool, do it. But then the way this lady is described is like all greasy in work clothes, it like smears and whatnot over it, and it's like, this is like, I mean, imagine what her hands must look like, and you want to make out with that in like some side alley. First off, side alley in it by itself. And then she probably has grease or oil or whatever on her fingers as well. It's like, you don't want that near you. But apparently it's doing it for Gwen, so. Yeah. So we get a fairly graphic sex scene between those two. And I don't know, I personally didn't need to read this. But once again, just like the swearing, this feels like it's in there for shock value rather than to tell you anything about the character, because we could have just been told that they made out in a side alley and it would have told us the same thing about Gwen. Instead, you get to read a graphic sex scene that doesn't add anything as far as I can tell. Well, aside from an infection to Gwen's downstairs, possibly. Can't attest to that. Oh yeah, towards the end of chapter 1 is something that actually made me laugh out loud, and I'm not sure it was intended. It was no use. Her arms and legs were trembling noodles, and a headache glanced between her temples, blurring her vision. Headaches glance between temples now? Whatever. What made me laugh were the trembling noodles. Okay. Yeah, so Gwen and her nameless friend get interrupted rudely, and she has to run from the offices, which is when her brain tumor knocks her out and she gets arrested. So an exciting first chapter for Gwen, but from her behavior so far, I have no real reason to like this character. Maybe feel sorry for her because she's dying, but likable, so far, no. So I've just finished another chapter of the Cyborg Tinkerer, and Pusheen over there is as impressed as I am, because it starts off with Gwen telling you that she's about to die, yet again, in case you didn't notice the several mentions before this point. And then she flip-flops between things. Like before she was like, oh, well, I'm not going to see my family again, who cares? Not that I bothered visiting them at any point, and now her stomach twists as she's thinking about her family, so suddenly she cares. I mean, okay, the woman is dying, so I guess some inconsistency in behavior is possibly to be expected, certainly to be accepted. But then the book also tells you that being a cyborg without a permit is one of the union's highest offenses. So far, we don't know anything about the political system, really. And neither does the book tell you why it's such an offense to be a cyborg or associate with one. But all in due time, maybe. We do learn that nobility is a thing because a lord comes visiting Gwen in prison. And And it brings up another question. She talks about the Reaper at some point, and it makes me wonder whether it's the same idea of death as we have in this world, or, in the West. Some parts of the West, rather. Or whether it's a more physical representation, like, say, in this world. But we don't know yet. I do wonder, she says that she hadn't told the feds her name when they had arrested her to keep her family from learning the truth. So, a society that has cyborgs and space travel has no other means of identifying you beyond you being awake and telling them who you are? That seems rather strange. And this part makes zero sense to me. So this lord is visiting her in prison, wants to talk about something to her. And she looked the man in the eyes, surprised by the barely restrained power in his gaze. Are his eyes about to go up in flames or something? Because otherwise I'm not quite sure what to make of that. It just sounds weird to me. But oh my god, she was dying, in case you forgot about it. She's definitely dying. If she says it 10 more times, maybe she's dead. I don't know. Oh yeah, oh my god, it comes up 2 more times, once over here, so you do not forget that Gwen is fucking dying. Yeah, like, nobody pointed this out to the author. That's just, And there's a couple of redundancies in here, really, like, not that she could anyway. The nausea and persistent headaches had yet to go away since the feds had brought her in. We didn't really need these since the feds had brought her in. She fainted last chapter. She woke up in prison. It's kind of clear how she got there. Unless it's, unless we ended up in some private torture dungeon instead, because then it's information you might want. But this is just about the facts. The other redundancy, Gwen stiffened, growing suddenly still. Yeah, that's what you do when you stiffen. You grow still. So, not really needed. And I mean, it is a bit of a chunky book, I'd say. And, if you cut some redundancy, it doesn't hurt your writing. Did I put down there? Oh yeah. Well, she can be a sarcastic bitch, I guess. She says that her cellmate had peed on her bed. And then at some point she describes it as her scented bunk. It's like, yeah. Well, at least she's just sarcastic instead of bitter about it. Okay, so this lord turns up and offers to turn her into a cyborg to save her in exchange for working for them for a certain amount of time. You'll be one of us. As a cyborg, you will lose your human memories over time. Why? You don't get told why you would lose your memories, but it's something I would rather like to know. Also, why is it over time? If you get turned into a cyborg and it affects you this much, then how is this a process rather than something that happens with the surgery? We don't know. Oh yeah, we're back with the swearing as well. She loved working as a tinkerer and she was fucking fabulous at it. I don't think I've ever heard somebody use the word fucking this much, and I feel like I know plenty of people who swear a lot. Okay, now we get something that's a bit contradictory to her needing to be awake and telling people who she is. The authorities knew her name, so they would be aware of her condition. So there is some sort of central registry where they know, okay, this is this person and this is what she's suffering according to our doctors. So why did she need to be awake to tell the feds who she was? I'm sure they could have figured it out without her help. It says that it's steampunk, but obviously we're also in sci-fi territory if we're dealing with like proper cyborgs and space travel and whatnot. But then we're back to horse-drawn carriages, and I don't know, I feel like a society that has evolved to this degree in the technological aspect at least would probably not mess about with horse-drawn carriages anymore. Like, if you can just build something that drives like a car, why would you have horses involved? Yeah, I'm concerned for those horses, to be honest, because they ride up to the docks. She realized they were the docks at the edge of Anchorage's gravitational field. Well, I hope none of those horses steps like one hoof too far, because the poor horse. They have space travel, they have the ability to create gravitational fields to keep things in place, and yet you're moving around in horse-drawn carriages and you can't figure out who a person is unless they tell you. That seems at odds with each other. Oh, and she's dying. She knew she was dying. But do you know she's dying? Do you? Do you? And if you thought sheer terror can seize you, then now be informed that it can also seize your veins. I don't know, maybe that's a common expression, but I stopped when I went over it and was like, weird. Oh, now we get to the fun part. Fun part in quotation marks. She gets her surgery, or gets prepared for surgery at least. And all she saw were the gears, plates, chips, and a massive battery. I'm sorry, but she's having brain surgery. Where are you gonna stick a massive battery? There's not an awful lot of space in a human skull to put anything else beyond the brain. Certainly not anything that I would describe as a massive battery. Like, you say massive to me, then I expect something like the size of my phone at least. It's like, where are you gonna put that? And still, even if you cut out some of her brain mass with the tumor, not what I would describe as a massive battery, I guess. More things that are at odds between the sci-fi level of technology that we have here and the way they want to do the surgery. Anesthesia interferes with the implantation of the chip. Your mind needs to be fully alert and unaltered to receive the mainframe, even if you pass out. So you can turn people into cyborgs, you can easily travel through space, but you haven't figured out how to do surgery with anesthesia that does not interfere with like cyborg implants. You have to do it like the medieval torturous way, like what the fuck. Yeah, so poor Gwen gets strapped down and cut open without anesthesia. But if she has to be awake and she passes out from pain eventually, or like while they open up her skull, I would assume, because I think cutting into the brain itself doesn't do anything because it doesn't have nerves to tell you that it is in pain or something. But if she has to be awake, do they wait? Like, if she passes out from pain, do they just sit there and say, yeah, well, I guess we'll stop the bleeding until she comes back to and we can keep going? Or it just sounds barbaric and unnecessary. Hey, Cleo. Yeah, you coming by for this read along as well? Even though we can only see your ears and your tail. And thank you for bringing all the pollen in and leaving it on the desk. Thank you.